I want to welcome everyone today to the Saybrook University Mindful Moments. Saybrook University is dedicated to helping the world heal. And so as part of that effort, we offer up these mindfulness practices so that everybody may partake in them and do their part to free the world, the planet, and themselves from suffering. So today I wanted to focus on something, a way of looking at life for us to approach our practice today. We often look at life as though everything we're doing is the be all and the end all. But there's another way to look at life, and that's to see that our everyday life dwells in the relative, and yet our spiritual life or our insight dwells in the absolute. So today we're going to look, as we sit in practice today of mindfulness meditation practice, and look at the relative and the absolute. So according to this definition, the relative is always in proportion to the whole. Absolute is the totality of all of existence. Relative is dependent, while absolute is independent. Absolute is capable of being thought of or conceived by itself alone. It is not relative to anything else. So there's something called the two truths doctrine. So as we sit today, perhaps we can focus on this. The two truths provision says that provisional or conventional truth, so that's the relative, which describes our daily experience of a concrete world. And then there's the other truth, which is the ultimate truth, and the absolute truth, which describes the ultimate reality of sunyata, which means emptiness of concrete and inherent characteristics. We don't know whether a tree in the forest makes a sound unless we are actually there. So the absolute becomes the relative in our viewing of it. So I'd like you to assume a posture where your back is straight and you're not leaning against anything too much. And your spine is like a stack of golden coins that reaches up to heaven. We focus on our breath going out and dissolving into space. There's a gap in time. And then the in-breath naturally occurs. There's a tiny gap at the end of the in-breath, and then a long, slow, dissolving, letting go out-breath. So there's 4 parts of the breath as we practice it. As we do that today, become aware as your mind drifts off into things of your life, the dry cleaning, picking up food for the dog, what you're going to have for dinner, what papers are due this week. And as you label that thinking in your mind, recognizing that those are simply thoughts that arrive on the landscape of our cognitive mind. And then as you come back to the present moment, hear the sounds of nature. Feel the weight of your body on your chair. Smell the fragrant flowers in your garden, and understand that returning to now is re-entering the absolute. So as we do our mindfulness practice, we're actually dipping from our relative lives, which we all need to contend with as we go about everyday life, and then return our awareness, as we label that thinking, to the more absolute nature of the existence we get to live. So just before we sit, a couple of thoughts for the 2 aspects of reality, the relative and the absolute. And you can close your eyes and assume your meditation position as I read these aloud. Relative, the dimension of reality in which in which each and everything is identified and defined by relative positions and qualities. While the absolute speaks of dimensions of reality in which each and everything is part of a seamless whole. Phenomenon is all that manifests and happens, where principle is the truth or reality underlying or manifesting through phenomena. Attributes are the qualities and circumstances that define our individuality and affect our experience, the unique flavor of our lives and personal karma. While true nature is the luminous, self-sufficient nature of each thing and being based on absolute qualities and completely independent of relative ones. Conditional, the relative differentiations we make in order to live our human lives, which are always partly based on conditions and subjects to change. Life as dynamic. Ultimate reality, the unchanging absolute aspect of reality, which is not limited by conditions, space, or time. Before we were born and will be after we die. Mundane, the way we experience reality when we are only aware of the relative and our fixed ideas label things as ordinary or relatively unremarkable and unworthy of our attention. Compared to suchness and thusness, the luminous, precious, miraculous quality of phenomena when they are experienced with an awareness of the absolute. So as we practice right now, let's focus on those two aspects of reality. As we focus on our breath as it goes out and dissolves into space, a tiny gap, in-breath naturally arising, tiny gap, long, slow dissolving, letting go, out-breath. As we label the relative as we become aware of it and return ever so gently and self-lovingly with compassion to this very moment and the experience of the absolute. So let's practice together in silence. It is through the relative qualities of our precious human birth that we are invited to experience the insight of the absolute, being part of the whole of space and time. As we breathe out. as we connect with our breath as it goes out and dissolves into space, experiencing the tiny gap at the end of the breath, the in-breath naturally occurring, tiny gap, and long, slow dissolving out breath as we return to the here and now. It's experiencing the qualitative nature and relativity of the thoughts we notice. Very gently say, ah, yes, interesting, with equanimity, and return ever so gently to the present moment, filled as it is with the beautiful insights of precious human birth and the absolute nature of reality. So as we continue to sit, we can bear this in mind, the qualitative natures of our everyday thoughts that we need for survival, and yet also the ability to return to this awareness of the absolute, the awareness of the emptiness of phenomena before we label it and concretize it. We can always return to the natural flow of the universe and our life in it. So we can remember as we go about our daily life, as we sit in meditation and contemplation, that effort is the key in the relative. Yes, we must do that. Simultaneously, effortlessness is the key to the absolute. So you can bring yourself back into the room, awareness of sights and sounds, feelings of groundedness in the seat in which you find yourself. And perhaps as you go about your daily life, you'll be able to pivot from awareness of the things that you need to do to survive in the relative, and carry at the same time an awareness of the profundity, the beauty, and the grace of being part of the absolute, a part of the whole. So thank you for joining us today for Saybrook's Mindful Moments. And we hope you can bear these insights and gems of wisdom as you go about your daily lives. Thank you so much for joining us today.